So, welcome, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah, you too, man. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're welcome. Now, you wanted to have a little bit of a chat today and discuss some things about different healing, Reiki, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, you got it, man. You got it. It's there's so many headings for this arena of interest that I'm engaged in. And so, trying to encapsulate it into sort of something I can pass to people is often challenging. But I found that, depending on the audience of the people that I'm speaking to, I will generally find myself, sort of catering the language. And so, what I thought, because obviously, you have a reasonably wide audience. I think I don't, I thought, well, I'll what I'm going to do is I've really enjoyed the process of bringing some of these topics into modern language and because it's much more graspable and relatable to the everyday person in that respect, and also for aspiring practitioners who are looking for, like I said, relatable language to sort of help them on their way, to keep them encouraged. And, in a sense, there's a real value in staying grounded too. And one of those ways we can stay grounded with our practices is by using, like I said, modern language as best as we can for some of these topics that can seem a little bit off the ground. So, yeah.
Awesome. Now, I know it's quite hard to define yourself as what you are as a practitioner, etc. But
Yeah.
what is your goal with helping people?
Well, yeah, after many years of sort of exploring and discovering, I found straight away my first experience with something very tangibly useful in the realm of esoteric sort of, you know, uh, adventures, I guess, was energy healing. And I went to a conference back in 2015, and very interesting. I hadn't been to one of these types of conferences. It was at the Tauhara Lodge in Taupo in New Zealand, for those that are aware of it. And I was very fortunate that I got it was a very small audience, and I got to meet Dr. Bruce Lipton, for those who know Dr. Lipton, and also several other people from in New Zealand who are quite well known. And it was a very small crowd. And so, anyway, Bruce was the keynote speaker. And at the end of the talk, he squished his 6 hour presentation down to about 2.5, 3 hours. And so everyone walked out of there with yeah, it was pretty full on. He even had a couple of days of recovering from his voice, But what was interesting is that we all left there feeling a bit, whew, but that was full on. And my friend who I went with, she was having a wicked migraine, and so I was trying to help comfort her. And there was a chap there, a young Austrian guy, and who turned out to be my birthday twin, which was pretty fun. He said, "Hey, look, can I try something?" And he put his hands over her head, and about 10 to 15 seconds, the migraine was gone. And we'd been trying for about half an hour to help her relax, and this caught my attention. And so, from there, I ended up in a very interesting conversation with this chap, and we're talking about everything from qigong to ancient civilizations to Russian martial arts and internal arts, and so much more. And on the topic of healing, he gave me a whole bunch of leads to follow because I was looking for something to do. And at this point, I'd sort of moved on from being a music teacher and guitar teacher at local schools, and I was looking to explore and find ways to supplement my living in a way that I can help to sort of nourish and explore this new path, because I was finding such great joy and new injected interest. So, as far as that goes, I just started exploring energy healing, and you know, um, just quickly, I can get straight into it. My first attempt at energy healing, when I had so what happened is right, so I got a book, and I downloaded the book from Kindle, I think it was, and because I was looking online, and I found this guy. He was appealing in his language, and I thought, well, the book's cheap, so I got the book, went through it, studied what he said to do, and then I was practicing this. Then all of a sudden, a friend came over, and she had a wicked, like a back problem, right? She had a real pain in between her shoulder blades, and it had been there for, I don't know, a couple of days or something like this, and and it wasn't shifting. And so she lay down because I asked her. I said, "Hey, well, can I try something?" because I'm playing around with this thing, like, because, that's it, me, I'm a bit skeptical and in a positive sense. I'm open-minded, but I like to try these things out. I want to validate these things. So I had no expectation. She was laying down on her tummy with her back up, and I just basically I put my hands on and I did the sort of the mental gymnastics and the things that the book said. And what do you know? All of a sudden, this pain, she says, it's moving. I said, oh. I said, which way is it moving? She goes, I think it was moving out her right shoulder. Yeah, her right shoulder. And it was moving from the center out to the right. And I said, okay, well, I'll just keep chasing it. So I just kept my hands there and kept doing the thing that the book said, and then it was gone. Like it literally, like she felt it move from her back, and then move out, and then it was gone. And she's like, oh, hey, that's cool. That's gone. And I'm like, wow, that's quite interesting. I mean, that really piqued my attention. It wasn't it was a reasonable result for a first effort. And so from there, I carried on, and I've got like I said to you when we caught up, I've got a whole swag of because I diarize, all of these things. It's important. I found very important to keep a written record. So yeah, that's what I thought. We could talk about today. I'd be more than happy to share some of the experiences that I've had as an energy healer, working with people, and totally just doing energy healing. Not really doing any manipulation or teaching them meditation or qigong or any of this stuff. Just purely them on the table or in a chair, or even standing up sometimes, which is what I'm into nowadays. I have to say, I found some really fun things to play with. So yeah, that's kind of it. I just found usefulness, and it was relieving people's pain and suffering. And I seem to have an ongoing string of success that made me think this is worth pursuing.
Excellent. So it was more experiential than just, once again, just reading that book and saying, yeah, this seems pretty cool and interesting. But when it actually, you get some results from it, that's when you start to go, hey, I need to investigate this a little bit more. So where did you start to, after that first healing, what was the path that you decided to take, like to read more or to practice more, or just share something with us?
Yeah, so all of the above, brother. Like I was looking for willing victims, and so it's friends and family, and they found it a bit hard and weird. I've got some of them are more open-minded than others. I started to discover that there was a little bit of a relationship towards personality types and beliefs in people, and any type of resulting success. There did seem to be a relationship to that. People who are more open-minded seemed more likely to get a result. Not always, like I recorded all of the results, whether they were positive, largely positive, or not at all, but sorry, anyway, get back to your question. As far as the path went, I just kept following it. And so I was just basically hoovering up all of this information that I could find. I was looking for, because back then, I didn't have access to a lot of sort of financial resources, because I was, seeking myself, I guess. And so I was just living, and I continue to live, very ascetically as well. But, I was just basically looking for anything I could find that was basically cheap books on Kindle was a starting point, because there's a lot of teachers who've been on there for a long time. Energy healing is not a new thing. It's been around literally forever, right? And obviously some cultures tend to embrace it more than others as a matter of case. It's not a special thing. It's just, yeah, that's what he does. You go see the guy. That's what he does. He does that thing. Yeah, you go see him, right? So yeah, so I mean, basically the first set of experiences, because yeah, experiential knowledge is where it's at, like it's fun to read about these things, and you and I have talked about this. We've both spent many years exploring the intellectual side of conversations, which is wonderful, but it's like, yeah, but how do we apply it? Can it be applied? Is it real? Am I just reading someone's fantastical story? Well, it turns out that, in my personal opinion, um, you know at some point you have, if you've got more largely successful positive outcomes than not so much, it creates a compelling story, or a compelling, set of, you've got all this evidence basically to, because I read a lot of skeptics on this topic, and they made some good points, and that helped me to sharpen up my game as far as understanding things like statistics went. I learned a lot about the placebo effect, and these types of things, because I really wanted to know. And some of it was quite challenging, actually, but it was good. It was a bit of a trial by fire. But, I'd like to think I can stand on my own, because, I mean, the evidence is, well, I've got a list basically of successes. And at some point I kind of stopped recording them. But yeah, I mean, a family member straight after my friend, a family member had a neck problem that she'd had for maybe a year and a half, and a lot of people just you may have come across this too, is that some people will just try to live with these things, and it does end up sort of being absorbed a bit in a bit of their identity, and it takes on personality. In fact, they start to revolve their life around these things as well. And so it ends up being, more than just a thing. It's actually like, they like I said, they start to identify. Now, I'm not saying this about this particular person, but this is something else I discovered. So anyway, my family member, they're in the chair, and I'm like, okay, well, and I've got all these other techniques and things that I've learned, and the odd party trick, I'll say too, which gave a pretty solid, robust 100% of the time usual result, which I have to say was quite impressive. But my family member with the shoulder, year and a half, within the first session. I will say this, and this is great advice for anyone who's wanting to get into this or doing it. I set up a metric system to record results. And so I would ask them, I'd say, give me a number out of 10, with 10 being the most painful and 1 being not so much. And so what we'd do is that I'd say, well, out of 10, and my family member said it was about a 7. After the treatment, she said, oh, wow, now it's a 4. She said, this is great, and all I'm doing, like, she's just standing there and I'm just putting my hand on the area and doing whichever one I was doing at the time, because I tried playing around with lots of them. And then we did another treatment, and then it went from 4 to pretty much nothing. Sometimes it gets like down to a 1. They've still got an inkling of something there, and then that just sort of like fizzles out over a little bit of time. But that was also very encouraging. And, I had this stream of successes early on. And like I've said to many, on this path, if I didn't have reasonable success to start off with, I wouldn't have continued with it. And so that's pretty much the sort of the birthing point in a nutshell of my foray into energy healing, and I continue to learn more and more and practice more and more. And there were people coming in and not so much, and after a while the numbers started to drop. And it's been interesting. It's been really like this, because I haven't really put myself out there hugely in a professional sense. Most of the people that come to me come through word of mouth. Have
you had success with? As in, like we've talked about migraines, headache, and some muscular tension. Have there been other things that you've had success with helping people with?
Great question, brother. Yes. So it started out, obviously, like, physical pain is a real easy one to tell, because you're either in pain or you're not in pain. And sometimes people get a relief from a pain they didn't even know they had. They became so accustomed to it, it became part of their life, and they didn't realize it, and suddenly they just feel lighter, and so that was interesting. So as far as the range of types of ailments that people came to me for, there was, muscle pain, neck, shoulder pain, back pain, hip problems, sore knees. I've worked with a few people with carpal tunnel issues. One of them's an office lady, the other one's like a hairdresser. I've had sessions with people. I had a lady come to see me who's got a really a long-term developed hip problem, where she can't walk up and down stairs properly and these types of things. She came for about 14 sessions, I think it was, and got reasonable sorts of results. But some things are so hard-baked, they take a long time for change to arise. And so you kind of become a little bit humble, because you can start going, oh man, I got the healing hands. You know what I'm saying? Who's up next? Who's up next? And then you get a situation where, like, you've done, say, 5 sessions, and, it's only incremental values, and you start to go, okay, well, some things take a bit longer than others. But so just moving on from physical things, then I started to, I had one lady come to me, and she'd been in a terrible car accident, and she'd basically broken both of her arms or wrists, and she'd honestly feared for her life. And she came to me, and she hadn't slept for a couple of months. Like, she was reliving this thing every day, for a couple of months. And she was so shaken up, and and she was like this all the time. And I saw her when I went for a walk, and I said, "Hey, why don't you come for a session? You might, if you get some benefit out of it, awesome." Well, she came for one session, and then she came back the next day for the second session, and she said to me, "Last night was the first night that I have slept, and I've woken up today not even thinking about the accident." And I said, "Look," and I say this, I say, "Look, no matter whether or not you believe in this type of stuff, if that's not some kind of value, then I don't know what is." She got back a quality of her life. She was, basically, inebriated to a sense with this anxiety. And, as far as the wrists went, when it comes to, but when bones are mending, they need to be set first, because I've heard stories of people getting energy healing before they've had the bones set, and things can not knit back together properly. And so she had the work done, but things like that, what I found is, generally speaking, the energy goes to where it's needed most. And in this case, she needed to stabilize herself emotionally and mentally first. And so she came back for a second session. And I'll just say this, because I want to share some of the other interesting things that I've noticed as well, is that she had an experience where she felt like she was having an out-of-body experience on the second trip. And that was quite interesting. When we finished the session, she was like, "Oh my gosh, you know, like I was floating or off and away." And it turns out that ends up not being much of an uncommon thing. And so, as far as other sort of resolutions of ailments go, the emotional mental stuff has been really valuable, because what I found is that in a lot of cases, people really a lot of people are looking for answers to things in their lives. And then the problem is a symptom of that. The ailment or the physical ailment's a manifestation of something else, a stress, an anxiety, a worry, and it's physically manifested. And when that gets attended to and they find some peace, and they're able to adjust their sails, so to speak, to better winds and make better decisions, because they're in a much calmer, more relaxed, stiller place, positive changes tend to genesis from there. And so, that has been, I've got so many stories to share, but that for me, those are the eye-opening ones, that because it started off with physical stuff, and then it started getting, what I would say, it started tiptoeing more towards the spiritual. And for me, when people are, and now that I have more of a map of consciousness, because I'm also a practicing hermeticist, which I have to say has been one of the greatest discoveries of my life. A very mechanical, straightforward, non-belief based sort of like understanding of reality that's testable. It's been so wonderful. And I won't keep talking. I'll let you jump in, but I've got a section of my life to talk about Reiki as well, which was quite significant too.
Sure. So what I'd like to know, from that very first experience where you were on the table and you were mucking around with a bit of that mental gymnastics that you'd done from the book and had some results, and then working from where you're doing now and what you're doing, what is changing in your mind and your belief system to be able to advance from that point to where you are now?
Wow, what a great question, man! You're always popping good questions, bro. Cheers. I'm just gonna have a cup of tea and then I'm gonna answer the hell.
You're welcome. I'll have a couple of bit of coffee.
Nice. Okay. So, sorry, can you reframe that question for me? I just need to get it in my.
So from when you started the Reiki healing, there was initial mindset that you called mental gymnastics, that
Oh, yes, yes, yes.
you weren't quite understanding, but now there's obviously it's come a long way now, and there's been a lot of changes in there. And I'm just wondering if you'd be able to try and verbalize the differences in your beliefs or thought patterns towards this energy healing now.
Great. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So there's been definitely been an evolution to my understanding and my approach and how I choose to engage as well. Because when you're starting off with this, you're tending to just like go, okay, you've got a sore thing. Let's just do this and see what happens. And I tell you what, a lot of people out there, you'd be surprised. Some of you guys have already got the chops and you don't even know it. It's worth playing with. And you know, what I've found is that as I've gone through this process, um, I've come to, so I did a lot of comparative analysis between healing systems, generally from Western male practitioners, because I listened to a lot of people from around the world and a lot of backgrounds and things, and I just found that I appreciated the language that was most familiar to me, which was, I come from a construction and forestry and mining and transport background, so I like mechanical engineering type language, things that make sense, and a lot of these guys were speaking and things that I could relate to and understand and grasp. So I mean, I must say since then, I've certainly wandered off into other territory, but it gave me a good grounding because I was comparing them to see what they had in similar and in common. Because I'm like going, I'm okay with the concept that there's a million different like energy healing modalities out there. And healing is an interesting word, actually. So, that's another good one to flesh out. But there must be like, uh, some way to understand this. And so, uh, but what I'll say is that from there, a friend I met quite interestingly, actually, through some strange coincidences, she sold me her massage table, and she also suggested that I go do a Reiki course or a Reiki course, which I prefer to call it Reiki now as opposed to Reiki. And anyways, this was very interesting for me because uh, I went to so she had a teacher, and she's quite a well-known teacher, lovely teacher. My teacher was Deb and James Rowley, and I went out to their place, and uh, I'm the only guy there. Okay, so and I'm full of questions, and I'm like, I want to know, like I'm very sort of intellectually wanting to know, grasp it, and that. And this is a much more feminine environment. It's very much more relaxed, and yeah, by the end of the day, I was a lot more relaxed. But yeah, I just, I was probably I wasn't trying to test the teacher out. It was more that I'm just an inquisitive person. So I'm a lot more relaxed nowadays. But I went in there and I just wanted to know. And the information was great in that it was so much about self-healing, and how important that is. And, you know, uh, and what I did was is that I went there for so generally in Reiki you'll go for, there's usually 3 or 4 classes. There's the first class, which is called Shodin, or the first degree. There's a second class which is called Okudin, or the hidden teachings, and then you've got the third class which is Shinpidin, or the mystery teachings. And then sometimes you'll have a fourth class which is a teacher class. And so I think there were 4. I think I did the 4, and so I'm a qualified Reiki practitioner teacher, and sometimes called a master. I have a little bit of an issue with calling myself a master, and sometimes I have to say nowadays I'm actually. I mean, some of the stuff that we've talked about off camera and that, like it's like mastery is an attainable thing, and when you're inching towards it, and you can see the leaps in your progress, and you go, well, actually, that thing there, as far as the skill attainment goes, technically, I kind of have mastered that to a reasonable level.
Definitely, and levels of mastery.
Absolutely. So, I still don't really refer to myself as a Reiki master. Some people call me that, but like you, basically anyone can go to do a weekend workshop and get that title. But what I found is that um, there were practices for Reiki. So I ended up doing a huge deep dive into Reiki, into the history, and I was looking for all the best teachers. So I've done a whole bunch of other sort of like other modalities, more Western, sort of a lot of New Age like things and all sorts of stuff. And then somebody said, "Why don't you go check out Reiki?" And I was like, "Okay, cool." And so this is obviously a Japanese format from the early 20th century. Chap goes up a mountain, does a 21-day meditation fasting experience, has a universal mind experience, comes down. Turns out he already was doing healing, but this experience gave him more juice and more capability and more understanding. And there's actually a lot of really great teaching analogies and allegory in his story, in the story of Usui Mikao, or Dr. Usui, or sorry, Mr. Usui. I'm not sure if he was a doctor, but um, there's there's a lot of speculation about how that system came about, and there's a lot of, I think, a lot of it's sort of speculation and fictionalized personally, but there's also some great stuff. And one thing I found out after finding the best research, because I've read so many books on this topic, because I really wanted to know, you know, because they say that he'd rediscovered hands-on healing, and it was a Tibetan thing and all this, and I'm like, going, what do you, man, the healing stuff's been going on all over the world forever, as far as I can tell. So there was a little bit of a narrowing of thinking over time, and I just didn't find this intellectually satisfying. So I wanted to be intellectually satisfied, at least as much as I could be. So I found one particular author, or actually three actually, because one of them was a partnership, Franz Steiner and Bronwyn Logan, who were living in Brisbane, and also Nicholas Pearson from the United States, and they were very thorough. They went and visited and talked to everyone. But I have to say, Franz Steiner, who's a prominent figure in the Reiki community, he's definitely, as far as it goes, he's the alpha dog for me. Like, there's not really anyone who's got his depth of knowledge about the origins that I've come across that he has in regards to sort of hard facts. Nicholas Pearson's definitely in that list, but yeah, Franz is like, he really puts the focus on personal practice, because one thing I didn't really learn when I studied Reiki was these cultivation practices. We talk about this in Tai Chi and Qigong as well. Like, you do your chops every day. You work on you got to earn your chi, basically. You refine your chi and you empower your chi. You do these two things basically, and you're also doing a bit of body conditioning. Not that there's a lot of body conditioning in Reiki, but yeah, so I found all of these exercises, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of these, and these are all traditional, and some of them are used in Aikido, and some of them are used in this system and that, and I also found that in Japan, say in the Western world, if you're this kind of practitioner, that's you kind of pigeonholed into that, and you can't really move into other things. Martial arts is a bit different, obviously, because it's a much more maybe an Asian thing, and not all of them, but I mean, but with some of these spiritual practices, like if you're a Catholic priest, you're probably not going to wander too far outside of that, or Baptist or that. That's your thing, right? But in Japan, there's a lot more flexibility and cross pollination, I guess. Shinto, Buddhist, Tendai, Mikiyo, Shigendo, and then there's all the martial arts. They all kind of worked harmoniously aside with each other. There's obviously a long history of the introduction of Buddhism and these types of things, but what I found is that a lot of the practices from Reiki, and this is important to remember, everyone, that Reiki is only it's about 100 years old, technically, and it's not even the original name. Okay, it's basically hands-on healing with a system. Whereas some things, you'll just, like, say Qigong, you learn how to feel the energy, and then you can move it around, and you do that, and that works fine too. Reiki has precepts, it has mantra, it has symbols, it has it has a set of specific exercises. It's got specific tuning forks for certain results. And so I started studying these, and then when I discovered Hermetics, I was able to make sense of why. Why do you do these things? Because the precepts in Reiki, oh yeah, you do that. It's just a nice thing you hang on the wall, and every so often you'll do it. It's like, man, there's actually a good reason for those things. Like they're basically bullet points which you elaborate on, and they attend to your mental, astral, and physical bodies in a lot of ways, you know. And so the Reiki adventure has been and was, it is still, I guess, because it's hard not to still be, because you're kind of part of that family and that, and I'm reasonably knowledgeable on the topic. Um, and it's obviously one of the more social, like, you know, more people have heard of, say, they'll go, oh, Reiki, yeah, I know that. If you say energy healing, they'll be like, what? It's funny because even in the English speaking world, you know, like the Japanese word seems to be more well known than energy healing or energy medicine. So, anyways, yeah, I over time my understanding of Reiki developed, and I saw the reasons why. I also saw what the intention was at the end, which lines up with a lot of other teachings too, including Hermetics in a sense, and the Qigong stuff too. Sorry, and in a specific Qigong, but I found that there were a lot of gaps. It wasn't filled out enough, and so it talked about certain things, but it didn't really weren't really explanations. And there's a lot of metaphorical language and symbolic language, as you probably know, and lots of these sort of systems with cultural differences, you know, like different cultural backgrounds that maybe the Western mind just can't grasp, or it's, I don't know, like it just wasn't full enough. I just like to be thorough, I guess. And so, you know, I was looking for practices, and I took great benefit from the early practices of Reiki. In fact, I'd suggest if anyone, you know, wants to start somewhere, Reiki's not a bad place. But as you do the practices, for me, as in doing the healing, things started opening up and flowering. It was like I was being encouraged because I was experiencing success, and I was paying attention to it, and I was making notes. And so it started to flower. The more I explored and the more I offered the service and the more I sort of explored and practiced, things just naturally opened up. And yeah, so hopefully that sort of answers the question. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, I know you're really keen to share some stories with us. I'd love to hear some some of your experiences with this, and just fire away, man, because I know you've got a lot to share.
Thank you, bro. Yeah, I do actually. So I've got a bit of a list here. So I'm just going to scroll down and I'm going to take you through a little bit of the history. Um, so let's see what we got here. So one interesting one is when you find people what you might call hyper responders who are very receptive to these types of treatments. Some people are just like this should just be their thing. They should be doing qigong and these types of things because they probably never need to see a doctor again, maybe. Although don't quote me on that. I remember going up to I was having you know, in my part of my previous life, I was a reasonably busy musician and music teacher, and I had a friend who he ran a local dairy, a local convenience store, and he played a bulbul, which was a lay down Indian banjo, and he wanted to have a jam, and so I said, yeah, sure, you know, like I can drop a chord in the background, we'll find out what the tuning is, and you know, I can figure these things out, and so I was able to make him a backing track, and we did some recording. And you know, and he spends a lot of time, or he did, leaning on the counter with a phone in his ear like this, right? And so he's got like he's always looks like he's a bit wonky, and I mean he's got a sore neck and all these issues and stuff like this, and you know probably a bit of a compressed spine or something like this. And I said, oh, hey, you doing all right, bro? He goes, oh yeah, and I got this thing, it's just me leaning on the counter and da. I said, oh, well, I can try a thing. So I tried a thing. And the next thing he's like, oh, because there's a technique I use to check for a rotated or unbalanced pelvis, and it's quite an interesting one, this one. And so that we righted that because that's a measurable one too, measurable, measurable, measurable. No believing, guys, measurable. And he's like, then all of a sudden he's standing up straight, and he's like, it's gone. He goes, this is awesome. He was really pleased. I'm like, cool. All right, write that one down. Another one, similar one. I was up at a radio station. So I used to be a DJ on a local radio station, and I used to go and do interviews as a muso and a musician up there. And one of the bros I used to play in a band with, he was the drummer. He's got a regular show. He still does it today, actually. And the station manager was up there, and he had Like, I just wanted to check the hip leveling thing, because this one technique that I learned, I haven't really found anyone it doesn't work on. If you can measure someone's hips, this thing works pretty much every time, and it's a no-touch one. It's very interesting. But I've just been going around, just like I said, looking for willing victims and just testing people's things and all this. And this fella, he was like worked in a shoe shop and a minter, like a key cutting service in shoe shops, and that he was a what do you call them, like a cobbler, but a more modern version, I guess. And he had some, like they're working on machines and things like that, and noisy environment too sometimes. And so I did the thing and adjusted his hips adjusted and aligned, and he's like, "Oh man, I've had a headache, I think it was a headache, or like that thing down the back. Is it like a thoracic thing, or the other one's sciatic or something like that?" So I can't remember what it was, but he had this pain down his neck, and he'd had it all day, and he had a headache, and it just went like that, just like that, just like that. And that was cool. It's like, yep, write that one down. And these are all encouraging, and so when you're recording success, you're compounding success, which is encouraging, because we don't live in a world where everyone's talking about energy healing or Reiki. And so you can kind of feel the doubt and the dismissive nature of the collective sometimes, especially when you start working with this stuff and becoming more empathic, and you start feeling more. You've got to manage that growing sensitivity, because you start picking up on things you didn't pick up before. You're picking up on resolutions of information that impact and influence your feeling body, so to speak. And you've got to learn how to liberate yourself and from those influences, but you've also got to learn how to ride those waves when they're just too big for you to, you've just got to learn how to sail that stuff. And so, I'll keep going here. So, oh yeah, here we go. Here's a good one. So, okay, so my cousin, right? He's a stocky dude, bro. Built. Goes to the gym every day. Stocky ass, real nice, really beautiful, lovely man, and young fella. And he was unfortunately in an accident. He was in the back behind the driver, I think, and he got T-boned. And he took it all. He was in the back and he got hit, and he came to me, and he says, "Bro, I'm not right, man." I'm looking at him going, "Mate, you sure you shouldn't be getting x-rays and stuff like that?" And he's like, yeah, I'm booked in tomorrow. I'm like going, okay. He goes, "Can you do some of that healing, like that Reiki on me?" I said, yeah, sure, bro. So I didn't have a table at the time, so I just he lays that down on the couch, and I'm just working on his back, and I'm playing with all these different techniques and methods, and just because I'm just looking to go, okay, well, if I do this mental gymnastics, or this feeling thing, or this movement, or this visualization, you're looking for registers, you're looking for things that change. And so I'm just doing what I'm doing. And then he gets up and he's like, oh, I think we did it maybe for like half an hour or something like that. And he gets up and he's like, he's all standing up straight, and he's like, oh, he goes, "Shut up, I think it's gone." And what did he say? He said to me, "Oh, you know what? I might just dodge the X-ray now. I think I'll be fine." I'm like, no. Need to go and get the X-ray, bro. So yeah, that was pretty cool, because he got a pretty quick result for a big thing, and in a lot of cases, just if you got tension from the memory of that experience as well, like that can act as a kind of a retainer or a maintainer of the physical issue as well. So being able to release and get still, what I found is that stillness is actually just where it's all at. When you can get super still and access things that the stillness gives you, these things they haven't got anything to grab onto. So if you know what I mean, like things just fall off because they're like there's nothing to grab onto, like a cat trying to climb up a metal lamp post. Like it can't get its claws in like it can in a tree. Okay, so the other thing I did is that when I was doing this hip leveling thing, right, where you're testing people, I wanted to have a third person there, because there's a right way and a wrong way of doing this. When I say wrong, it's like you can kind of you want to. I'm constantly seeking to avoid delusion, right? And so I had a third person there, and I said, right, okay, so I'd get down and measure the pelvis, And then, I'd get down on my knees. You don't lean down. You've actually got to get down and have your eyes level with it. And so you learn how to measure it from the front and measure it from the back and go, okay, sweet. So it's a bit higher on one side than the other. And then I get the third person or the other person to do the same thing in the measurement and acknowledge it. And then they go, yes, I can see that. Cool. All right. And then I do my the technique, and then we would check it, and it was lined up. And then I get them to get down and check it, and they'd be like, oh, wow, that's legit. And then I'd do it on the other person like that. And that was a good way to build up confidence and a sense of expertise and professionalism in what I was doing, to say, hey, look, let's not believe anything here. Let's just put it all to the test. If there's not a significant kind of outcome, then, but there is still some kind of outcome, that's still something. But significance is important. And in statistics, I believe it's called, there's positive and then largely positive and these types of things. So I got a bit of that language going, and that was very helpful, because a lot of the people that I was doing these things on, they were just sort of like humoring me and going, oh, Phil's into this stuff. Let's just humor him on here, We're glad that he's into something, Okay, so that was one thing. And just jump in, brother, anytime that you want to ask a question.
I'm
But
enjoying listening to these stories, bro.
okay, right. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, so so it was the weekend or the day. So my Reiki 2 or Okuden class, which was, I'd been out all day doing that, and that's definitely a lot more involved than the first one. And everyone teaches a little bit differently, I think. But the lady had, for the last 3 days, she had a couple of kids. She was a solo mum, and she was under a lot of pressure all the time. She'd had this problem, she had a pinched nerve or some kind of neck issue that she'd had for neck issues. I found myself dealing with a lot of neck issues, actually. And she had been taking all these painkillers and trying to do these things and not getting any results. And so I said, hey, you want to try a thing? I've just done my Reiki 2 course. Not that that would have mattered, I don't think, but I'm fresh out of the soup, so let's have a tutu, right? She's like, yeah. Put my hand on. 2 minutes later, I'm not kidding. Suddenly, she's like, because she had tightness and this thing all across her neck, and it went from this within 2 minutes down to this. She's like, oh my gosh. She said it's still there, but it's nothing like it was. And she'd had it for 3 days. And then a couple of minutes of applying this stuff, and she just, she was like, and I think, within a couple of days it had gone, Sometimes there's thresholds of healing that you go through where the majority of the issue subsides. Sometimes you just have complete spontaneous remission of these issues, and those are always the interesting ones. But yeah, that was a largely positive one. And, and when people when the look of relief, right? For me, that's very satisfying. Some people are very gratuitous with their thanks. Sometimes they're just like, oh, sweet, thanks. Okay, cool. But yeah, for me, it's just very satisfying to witness some kind of change as a result of a thing that I'm doing that by contemporary standards would seem to be highly unlikely. So let's keep going here. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to find a couple of normal ones. When I say normal, I'm just going about pain ones. Then I'm going to go into a little bit more of the esoteric stuff that I've experienced, because after a while, the practice naturally evolves into other things. Like I said, the lady who came and had an interesting experience on the table. One of the cool things about going to a classes, like the Reiki classes, is that you're in a very supportive environment. Like, I don't want to use the word safe space, but it's like, it's just supportive. And so you're much more relaxed. And when that's the case, moments of intuitive possibility and insights and epiphanies, it's much more conducive for that sort of thing. You can still do it under stress, but under pressure, but you know, when you're in an environment, when you're starting off, you want to experience success and build up a self, you know, like a faith based on conviction, you know, conviction based faith system, not a faith based on belief, but from regular success. And so the lady, you know, that was taking it said, right, okay, so I think this was the Reiki master class. And so we had another lady come in who was like a Reiki 2 student, I think, and she was a local principal from a school, so you know that must carry some credibility, I guess, with her commentary. You'd like to think so. And she's on the table, and we're doing this thing where we're scanning the body, right? And it's in Reiki they refer to it as biosen, and we're basically scanning for using the clairsentience to train like the spirit sense of touch, you know, like the building the ball type thing, right? Scanning for and I hadn't really we touched on building the ball, but we didn't really focus on cultivating awareness of it so much. It wasn't a big focus on that, but just doing a scan, and at different levels there's different layers of the aura. This is the way that was taught to me at that time. And basically, anyway, so I'm scanning this body, and I'm like going, I have no idea what I'm doing here, right? I'm just I'm just like, somebody's got a sore thing, put my hands on it, and they get better. There's a lot more involved here. This is my friend saying you should go do this class. I said, okay, sweet as. So this is the second class, right? So I'm a little less full on in this class because I've got to have a few questions answered and things like that. And anyway, so I'm scanning this lady. She's lying on the table, and I'm like, okay, and then I go do another pass, and then I lift up my arm a bit, and then I'm like, oh, and then I just get this random notion to tap my left shoulder, right? And my teacher says, because everyone's in the room and we're all watching this and we're all watching to learn, and she goes, oh, what was that about? And I said, left shoulder, the age of maybe 11 or 12. And the lady looks at me because there's levels of this is the way I was taught at the time. Levels of the aura, like the chakra system, are sort of, they develop as you grow up. And I'm still, you know, getting to understand these things. I don't work a lot with chakras, so to speak, but you know, I was just doing what I was asked, basically. So I had this thing where I was doing like that, and I went, oh, 12, I think, yeah, 11, 12. And the lady looks at me and she goes, I dislocated my shoulder when I was 13. And I thought, wow, like, okay. I mean, dislocating, I've never dislocated a shoulder or anything, but I understand it's a reasonably unpleasant experience, especially when you've got to pop it back in and that. So that could have left a mark. So that was interesting. Now, so what happened is that I ended up researching a bit of psychic stuff. And so I got into Doc Ram's books as well. And there was a lot of stuff in there about developing psychic abilities. You know, I was just having fun playing with it. And I started sort of relaxing a bit more when I had people. So I had my music studio and I had a table set up in there, right? So people would come in for guitar lessons and music lessons and things. Then they'd have this table. Oh, what's that about? And I said, oh, for Reiki now as well. They go, oh, okay. Some people are like, okay. And some people are like, oh, yeah, cool, bro. Can you have a look at my thing? Yep, sweet. I wasn't charging or anything like that. I was just, you know, jump on, you know, whatever. But I had a mate who was really supportive back in the day, and she used to come up, and this lady was in the wars, man. She was a hardcore, hardworking lady, bunch of kids, and real soldier. And she was real supportive and always helpful and keen to try out stuff. She was very responsive. So anyway, so I'm working on her, and I think she had a sore hip or something like that, or I had this notion of, I said, oh, have you got something going on here? I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but it was sort of her left side by her ribs there. And she's like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, oh, okay, sweet as. Well, a year and a half later, she had to get keyhole surgery or something like this to get her gallbladder removed. Right? And I'm like going, and she's the kind of lady that'll put up with pain for a long time before she does anything about it too, you know, like for some things, you know, but you know, some things are what I found is that some things are like, hey, trying to get your attention, hey man, I'm here. And then the knocking gets louder, and then it gets so loud that it just slaps you on the face and kicks you to the floor. But yeah, that was quite an interesting one. So I was like going, huh. I mean, I'm not really clairvoyant. I'm still working on that stuff. I have experiences, but it's not reliable as such. But I just get these insights, right? So you're working with someone on the table, and sometimes these things will stand out. So this is where I'm going to go into next. I'm going to get a little bit more esoteric. So we've talked a lot about the physical stuff, and I could literally go on about this. But one thing I'll say is that sometimes people will come to me and then go, "Huh, um, that was fine, but I don't feel any different or any better," and that. And I'm like, "Oh, okay, sweet as well. That's what it is. I'm sorry. It's sometimes it just doesn't seem to have an effect." And then the next day, they will send me a message. They're like, "It's gone. What? The thing I came to see you about, it's gone. I woke up this morning and it's completely gone. I've had this for like weeks." And I'm like, "Well, that's cool." Sometimes it was half an hour later. And sometimes it was even a few days later. But it's hard to attribute it to other things because they're just living their same old lives. And the only thing the major that's different, they'd had this thing for 6 weeks or something, and then they come and see me, and then a day or two later, things seem to have righted themselves. Like I said, pardon me, this is the subtle world, and some people have differing perceptions of perceptibilities of subtle things. So, okay, all right, now I'm going to just talk about one that was quite interesting, and then I'm going to talk about some more esoteric stuff. So if you want to jump in with anything, just let me know. Okay, so I did a Skype call once. So I haven't really done a lot of what you would call absent healing or distance healing, and it wasn't really like over Skype or Zoom or any of those types of things. And you didn't really do those things back in the day, like like in 20th century Japan, because we didn't have the internet. And from what I understand, the Asui-san he would charge up, say, crystals and send them to people, like quartz crystals, clear quartz. But and maybe there was some, they were sending blessings and prayers and these types of things in their own way as well. But generally speaking, the absent healing thing is more of a sort of a modern um, thing to do when you're doing it over Skype and things like that anyway, and over the phone and that, using technology. And that's, people can go, okay, you know what? I can do the hands-on thing and at a push, the hands-off thing, or even if you're sitting down in the room doing it without even touching the person, that's a real stretch. But the over the phone, over the Zoom thing, that's just a bridge too far for a lot of people. So I had a friend and we were texting and she says, "My gosh," she says, I've had this pain issue in my teeth for at least 2 weeks now. And I think I'm going to have to go get the surgery I've been putting off." And she's basically got a couple of inflamed or she's got a couple of inflammations in her wisdom teeth. And she's got a strange jaw. The jaw hasn't quite developed properly, or it's quite odd. And the orthodontist made a point of saying that it's a little unusual, but not unworkable. But they'd have to surgery it. And she wasn't a surgery kind of girl. She was like, "No, I've got to be another way of doing this." So I said, "Hey, let's catch up for a Skype and see if I can do this distance healing thing, right?" Well, we did the thing, and I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm just doing the stuff I got told to do, right? Which is basically trace one of the Reiki symbols, which is what they call the distance healing symbol, which turns out to be much more than that. But and not even maybe was that actually. But anyway, I just do the thing, right? To see, okay, well, like I kind of think I know what I'm doing, and then she says, "Oh, okay, thanks for that." She says, "I'll let you know how I get on, but I need to go lie down." Okay. So, anyways, um, now what ends up happening is that about 45 minutes later, she gets on Facebook and writes, a couple of paragraphs, and she's beaming, saying basically, "I've got no idea how you did this, Phil, but the inflammation's gone down and the teeth have gone back into their natural places in the sockets." And she's just like, "What?" Like, and I'm like going, "Huh." I mean, I'm all about anecdotes, so I record the anecdotes, right? I don't say this is proof. These are just little stories I found along the way. Now she ends up having this. She's had this issue actually before. In fact, she was the lady who was at Tauhara with me who had the migraine. And prior to that, getting the treatment on the migraine at Tauhara, she had actually gone to see an orthodontist, and because she needed to get the surgery on her teeth, she had some other teeth issues. But basically, she had this toxic kind of abscess that had sort of eaten away or done something where the jawbone had sort of like dissolved a bit or something like this. It was very serious. And so she's talking to all the people at the conference center, and there were doctors and scientists and naturopaths, so many people, health people there, right? She got the she had the X-ray done and it showed it and it was pretty heinous. Well, a week after the Tauhara thing, where the guy did the energy healing, where Alex did the energy healing, she got another set of X-rays, and the orthodontist is holding this thing, scratching his head, going, "Hang on, wait a minute, what's going on here?" Once the jawbone part of it had grown back, and the teeth had all sorted themselves out. So she was highly receptive to this stuff. But the fact that this bone had somehow grown back, or the cartilage or something had grown back. I mean, she had the two X-rays there within about sort of 10 days of each other. And the only thing that really had happened was that she'd had this energy healing by Alex. And Alex is from The Force in You, Alex Krakalinig. And, I'd say he's reasonably adept with these practices. And so, yeah, that was interesting. So that was my first foray into distance healing over Skype and getting a reasonably dramatic result. And I've got lots of theories as to why, but sometimes it's just good to live in the moment and go, okay, I'm just going to chalk that up to a largely positive success. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I want to bridge into some of the more esoteric stuff that I've experienced, if you'd like. And yeah, so, okay. All right. So this is pretty fun. So I had a lady come to see me. She came to me for quite a few sessions, about a dozen or so sessions, and for a physical issue. And one thing that people experience a lot of the times is they see colors, right? They'll just be lying there, and then they'll see like sparkling lights, or they'll start feeling things. And one of the bros was on the table, and he was just coming for a session because he's such a busy guy. He's a beautiful man. He works on the local youth line, the Lifeline, and he works with people in hard situations. And one of the most beautiful people I've met actually is Brother Mike. And anyway, he was on the table, and I have a chat with people after each session, and he goes, when you were on my feet? And I said, yeah. He goes, oh, bro, I still felt your hands on my head. I was like, wow, that's interesting. Okay. So this lady who came to me for a dozen or so sessions, towards the end of it, she said, basically, I set the room up, and I'd have a little bit of nice music. I've sort of wandered away from music. It's good to have a bit of white noise because otherwise the environment can be quite distracting. And if you've got jolting sounds like construction going on in the background, it's not helpful. So if you can get some white noise going, like a fan or a fridge or something like that going, that's quite helpful. Maybe a bit of real, not too busy, stimulating music. It has to be like just like a nice steady drone. You know this from hypno and binaural beat tracks and things like this, right? So meditation tracks. So anyway, so I've set it all up, and she's like, "Wow, man, you're really cranking today." This is after about 10 sessions, and I said, "I'm still over the other side of the room, just setting up. I haven't even got you." She's like, she opens her eyes. She's like, "Oh my gosh." So what was happening is that earlier on, when I'd be doing the thing, she was saying, the purple's quite a popular color. Okay. And there's a reason for that. Okay. My understanding is that this is essentially the ether, or the Akasha, right? And Kabbalah, and Franz Barton's Kabbalah, which I'm also a practitioner of, KTQ. E is the dark violet. And it turns out to be, that's the best association I can come up with anyway, is that people are just getting very still and very quiet, or they're picking up on mine, or I'm a tuning fork because I'm a practitioner of these stillness practices. And so they're putting themselves in a receptive, kind of vulnerable almost position. And so they're having basically I'm the alpha tuning fork in a sense. But yeah, towards about the 10th session, she noticed that she said, I'd notice it wouldn't happen until I felt your hands, because, I don't always touch the head. You don't need to touch them a lot of the time. They can feel the stuff. Once you start being able to pump some stuff, and some people are natural at this anyway, you don't really need to touch them. Some people like to be touched, though. They appreciate that, and sometimes that's actually a lot of people need, is some positive side of intimacy, actually. But you know, she said, she noticed that the purple was coming on as soon as she got on the table, right? And so I have a theory that the more healings that I do, the table essentially gets charged as well, or the environment, or there's like a gestural part of my ritual of setting up actually sets everything up. It's like rituals, like you light the candle and the incense, and you do the thing, and you do your prayer, and you do these things, and you have this repetitive ritual, and then over time, it just activates faster. Like Doc Ram would say, you have a switch, to go from the mundane into the sacred sort of thing, or the profane into the sacred. So that was really interesting. So I really started taking note of what people were visually seeing. Now, I didn't try and explain it, because you can just speculate all day long. It's an interesting thing to observe, but I didn't want to get too caught up in these visual phenomena, because it can become a bit of a distraction. People want to talk about things and that, but sometimes they were useful. Sometimes people would talk about some people were having full-on visual experiences. One mate came to me. He was really struggling with meditation. He's like, "Oh, I've got I went to this meditation class, and they gave me a candle and a picture and a CD, and taught me how to chant and stuff." And he says, "Oh, I can't seem to get it right, and da da da." I said, "Oh, bro, you probably just need to simplify it, eh?" I said, "You probably just need like a real simple meditation object." He's like, "Oh, I can't even visualize stuff. I can't think of the candle flame and that." I said, "Well, do you want to do this?" He's like, "Yeah, I really want to do meditation." I said, "Okay, well, let's just do the session and see what pops up." So I'll often say to people on the table, you know, maybe there's something you want to know. Maybe there's an area of your life you'd like to experience change in. Maybe there's some information you could receive that can help you move through something that's kind of holding you back. And so think about how great it would feel to have that. Put yourself in the future position and just feel how relaxed. Yeah, and then I just talk about that. That's a guided meditation that I do as part of my setup, along with muscle relaxation, etc., and breathing. And anyway, and they say, just let it go. Just let it go. So at the end of the session, on top of a bunch of other stuff that happens, the bro goes, "I saw 100% clearly a white triangle in my view." And I'm like, "Can you picture it now?" "Yes." I said, "Right. You've basically given yourself the gift of proving to yourself that you can visualize. You've demonstrated to yourself that you can. Now you need to hold on to that and start drilling it, working it, working it, working it." Now, I'm not sure how he got on with that. I have caught up with him, but I'm not sure if he's still doing it. But that's sometimes how it rolls, the change that you want to experience or what you want. Sometimes you can receive an epiphany or an insight on the table. And I encourage that with people, because you can get a multiple of outcomes from just having a session with someone, depending on who the practitioner is and how they run it. And sometimes it's like, I'm just doing the thing here. It's just coming through me. There's a concept called being a clear channel or a hollow bone, where you're just like the thing and it's coming through you. That's a bit more passive. I've got to say, as I've gone on, I felt like I feel more confident about facilitating change with a bit of intent, especially now that I'm working with this energy scale and hermetics and Kabbalah and these types of things. Not everything's suitable for everyone and everything, but as far as, like, if we just talk about Jin, Chi, and Shen, or vital, astral, and mental energy, generally speaking, it's vital and astral that you'll use them. That those are the ones that make the changes, because that's most of the physical, emotional stuff. And once you've got your emotional situation sorted out, the mental part of yourself can find a bit of peace. You're not caught up in the story process. And so, teaching people how to relax their mind can just stop all that. But so anyway, esoteric stuff. Okay, so here's another one. So we've got a lady on the table. This is up at the music room, and she's and so I hit her up afterwards, and she looks at me and she's like, said, "Oh, are you okay?" Like, she was just getting on the table to humor me. Actually, she's a family member, And she's like, I just felt like half of my body was lifting up off the table. I'm like, oh, how very interesting. And then at another session, it was like, did somebody come in the room while I was out? Like, because sometimes people just fall asleep, that's fine. And I'm like, nah. And she's like, oh man, I could swear there was someone else in the room, right? And and like I said, like my experience, and I'm just happy to be open with this, but the things that I experience and see, especially back in the day when I was doing it quite a lot, the Reiki sessions anyway, was that, sometimes I'd see like a flash of a ball of light, just like a random insight. And I was trying to find ways to train that. And I kind of got a little thing I can do there. But I found that the Reiki practice of using clairsentience and feeling for things that's a pretty good one. Some healers talk about ailments have a certain smell, and so you can develop your spirit sense of smell or olfactory ability to detect things. But you kind of find what you're good at naturally, and your natural things tend to emerge first or foremost, especially when you do, like, say, Initiation to Hermetics by Franz Barden. You'll find that your natural sort of special skill sets will tend to emerge naturally first, and then the other ones, well, you just got to put a bit more work in. But as far as like actually, I'll just have another look down here because I've got some more. Oh yeah, okay. So I've got lists of like people's visual experiences, and they have very. I've got I had a mate jump on, and he struggles with chronic fatigue, and he's in the wars a bit from time to time, and he had a beautiful experience on the table where he had a visual of being a kid, enjoying his life and remembering back then, and it brought him great peace, and he sort of sat with that for a few days. It was like, oh man, it was good to revisit that stuff. And it turns out that, being able to link back into old memories of feeling great, you can totally like tune into that and recalibrate yourself to not to the situation, but to those elevated be expressions of being. So you can use that to essentially heal yourself, and you know, like thinking about if you're struggling at the moment with, say, energy issues. Like I've had some fatigue issues the last few years, for various things. I'm not sure why. I just um, although I have some suspicions, but I've managed to sort them out just by focusing on times when I felt very strong and virile and these types of things, and using things like the auto suggestion with the mala beads and some of the practices and things like that. It's actually pretty easy to turn things around quite fast, and yeah. And so but I want to just quickly brush on a one more that happened more recently, especially since I've started being able to do the standing qigong type stuff where you can float people and access their energy bodies, and that which I think is something that's quite niche and new. And nobody really knows about this stuff. And once you can figure this out, and like I figured it out just by watching videos and paying attention and just being open to it and saying to people, hey, would you like to try something? I've got a lady, she's on the table. She's got a brain tumor. She's got a whole bunch of other physical issues too. But anyway, she's on the table and she's never had a session like this before, but she's open to it, right? And so I was able to, she's giving me real-time feedback, okay? And feedback afterwards. I always get feedback. I always ask for feedback. I don't press for it unless they're open to it, but I invite them to give me feedback because it's helpful. I say thank you. You don't have to share everything, but some people really want to talk about stuff. It's amazing how much people open up actually after they've had one of these sessions. They're just like, oh man, I just feel like I could talk about anything, Phil. It's great. I'm like, oh, hey, well, let's. So she's on the table, and she gave me the feedback. And number one was that she got no relief from any of her physical pain issues, basically. But the whole time she felt like my hands were on her head the whole time. Even when she felt me on her feet and things like that, she felt it hot on the spot. I think it was the left side, sorry, the whole time. like I said, the energy goes where it's needed the most. Like the squeakiest wheel is the one that gets the oil. And so, she's only come for one session, and that was a little while ago, and she's due for another scan. So it'll be interesting to see if there's been any significant kind of change. But like I said, to grow conviction, you've got to have satisfying kind of metrics and results, because otherwise it could be this, but da da da. But what she did have, which was probably the most surprising thing, is that so when you're touching hands with people, you can basically put your mind intent in other people. So we learned to do this thing in Hermetics and Qigong called the three transformations, right? Where you learn to internally, alchemically change you between states and move between the various bodies, right? Or these landmarks on this big strata or continuum of energetic states, right? The three bodies are basically like these big landmarks, essentially. They're very distinctive, but they kind of blend into each other, and there's all these strata in between, etc. But anyway, so I said, okay, well, I'm gonna, just tell me what your experience. So I basically I can do the three transformations in myself, and I was able to do this in her on the table. Doing it standing up is a lot easier. Like I haven't, like you can do it standing up. It's not that much of an issue. Doing it laying on a table, that was interesting, because I say that I think that I floated her on the table. I'm not sure if that's the right terminology, but anyway, I got her to relax. I'm putting my mind into her, and I'm doing the three transformations up and down. And then she says she feels this big column. She feels her crown open up, and she feels this big column of energy just moving up and down and just opening her up like it's opening up some kind of central channel. In some traditions you might call it the sushumna, or the what's the other one for it? Anyway, yeah, it's like a central channel, or the central axis. And she's having this. Well, when we talked about it afterwards, it seemed like she was having a pretty wild experience, actually. But like I said, she didn't really get a lot of big results out of the thing, because if anything, it was more to do with the fact that she's got something on a vital organ that's, problematic. So that's been one of the more recent things. And I have to say that when I get clients in now, and I can take them through, and I just want to say this to people too, keep exploring, guys. If you find yourself liking doing energy healing, or as an energetic practitioner, working with people, keep exploring, look at all the wild stuff, flesh it out, because you will find gems. When people come to see me now, they can get on the table. I can also take them through a kind of a test to see how sensitive they are. And this helps me record more metrics and gather more data for my own personal and professional use. But also, I can teach them how to tune into energy. I can see how easy it is to float them. And if they're really tight and tense in that, if I can teach them a few basic loosening exercises and then teach them how to relax a bit more, they can tune into this energy. And once they get that feeling, that subtle feeling, then they can breathe it in, and they can start essentially harvesting it, go into a natural environment and just sit there and do pore breathing with this feeling. And they can start initiating self-healing, because you're harvesting more of this stuff and you can condense it, and it's wonderful. There's a little bit more to it than just that, because there's some things that need to be mentioned. But I mean, that's a lot of information about my adventures with healing, and there's a lot more too. But if this video serves anything for people who are aspiring or want to get into these practices, keep going, guys, because it just tends to self-nourish and flower. You will be challenged as well, but generally speaking, it's a pretty soft landing with the training wheels when you start, and you'll be very encouraged. And it's very satisfying to have a use. It's one thing to talk about all these things, but when you're able to do it, surrender a bit, find actual cultivation practices that you really enjoy, and then to actually have measurable outcomes that satisfy you, it's a game changer, because your whole worldview starts changing. Like you go, like one of my bros who's a real well-known Reiki teacher over in Aussie there. He's like, I've talked to him many times, and he said, when you first start doing this, you want to get on the rooftops and shout it out. It's like, oh my gosh, you guys want to be checking this out. This stuff's amazing. Well, the collective don't buy into it like that. Even when I've worked on lots of people and they get great results, and they're like, man, this is amazing. Sometimes they won't come back. I mean, do I smell? I don't know. that's just the way it is. You don't get too attached to that. So yeah, anyway, so that was a whole bunch of stuff there. Thank you for letting me. Da, 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 da.
Hey, you're welcome. And I'm wondering if maybe we could just finish with a bit of an intellectual discussion. Obviously, there's no way we can understand how this really works, but we can theorize and we can have our own beliefs of how these things. And for me, I'm looking at the Reiki practitioner or the healer is building up, or getting in touch with a certain amount of positive energy, and maybe those blockages are a negative form of energy, and basically the positive energy is able to overwhelm and clear out that negativity. I mean, that's my simple explanation. I'm sure you might have something a bit deeper.
Yeah, great. Yeah, this is a really good fun thing to flesh out because um, the more we do this, the closer we get to understanding it, and a plausible mechanical understanding is just helpful to stay encouraged as well. So here's my quick nutshell version. So in Hermetics and in other traditions, we have this axiom that the universe is living mind. So everything contains some level of consciousness or some kind of, everything's comes from the same point as at some point, right? So it's all uh, there's an intelligence operating. Now, my understanding is that these different fields or energies, they're all manifestations of these higher forms or higher vibrational forms. This is not to deride or derog any of these lower things. They just some things are dense and some things are not. Some things are energetic. The life force, if I just use that very generic general term, in my experience, has a self-correcting nature to it. It desires evolution. It desires growth. There is a decay and destruction cycle in these. This is a natural part of being on the earth realm. Things only last so long. Then they get recycled. Um, but there is definitely in my view, the different fields, like the life force field or the vital field, is an information field that informs the operation of the body. Now, the body can be overwhelmed by toxins, right? So the more toxins you're putting in, it's inhibiting the body's sensitive, subtle information receptors to translate that into uh, cohesive, useful, functional, growth-based information. It's kind of like, Lego blocks or things that just slot together. Oh yeah, da 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 da. Everything works fine. Sometimes it gets a bit wonky and it's like, hang on, things ain't, like this, and it's noisy essentially. So toxins create noise in the body and create an inability, in my view anyway, for the information field to be effective. So what you got to do is you just got to overwhelm the body or the wonky receptors with just basically higher quality alpha tuning forks. Like go out and learn how to do tree qigong. Find a big old tree and learn how to connect with the tree and just connect with the tree and sit with the tree and let it just cycle through you. Like the torus field of the tree. It's an overwhelmingly large life force emanating being. Here's us. Here's this giant ancient tree. Which ones do you think is going to be the alpha in that equation, right? And so, that's my best sort of thing at the moment is that, and that happens mentally and emotionally too. And so you have, like you said, blockages or stagnations, and that can be the result of obviously food choices, water, environmental influences. There's also emotional, astral type influences, expectations, obligations. Maybe you don't feel good about yourself, putting pressure on yourself, not being kind to yourself, essentially. And then an inability to sort of genuinely express that outwards too. That's why you really got to look at yourself pretty closely. Introspection. Then there's the mental stuff of cleaning up the mental body, which can be impacted through the various bodies. Like they're all interlinked and they all affect each other. And so there's ways to clean them all up so that the fields that they live in, that they're nourished from, to work optimally, the information's just cleaner. You're cleaning up the signal, and then you're optimized, for the Earth walk, which is what we should be doing. Like if everyone was optimized, we'd be doing some pretty amazing things. But identifying toxins, you do start reading the labels on your cans before you pull them off the shelf, guys. You know, just start there, right? So all of these things can help with self-healing and also opening yourself up for higher interactions and connections and things. So yeah, just clean up the signal, clean up the pipe. Yeah.
Fantastic. And where can people find you, Phil?
Okay, so well, I'll give you some links that you can put in the video description underneath, brother. But you guys can find me on Facebook. I'm just Phil Rice on Facebook in New Zealand. I'm not sure how easy it is to find me on there. I just have a personal page there. I've got a Telegram account that I post a lot of like memes and funny things and videos and things. I really like Telegram. It's a lot of fun, and that's just a small little thing. I also have a Substack blog which I post to every other month or so. I write an article. I've got a stack of articles on there. I talk a lot about esoterics, but I try and make it very current and modern. And it's you can see the esoteric conversation kind of woven in, but it's not so obvious. I do have an Instagram, but I don't really do a lot with that. So, but yeah, if you want to get hold of me to connect with me directly, you can email me info at Phil Rice, philrice.co.nz. So info at philrice.co.nz. And yeah, let's catch up. I'm located in Auckland, in sort of Howick Pakuranga Botany area, and I have practitioner rooms in local Howick that I use for taking people for sessions. And yeah, I can teach you, meditation, various levels. Like myself, brother, like we're right into meditation, and there's so many different ways to do it, and outcomes that you can aim for. I can teach, several qigong forms as well, which is great. So we can call it energetics, but the qigong forms are beautiful. And once you get those down, you can dance and feel the feeling. You can find that, if you're not feeling well, you can go and do one of these quick qigong forms, and it'll just snap you out of it. You just tune into the life force, move the body around. It's great. Moving the body around, that's a good one. And obviously I'm a Reiki teacher and practitioner too. I'm not too active there, but but I when I say that, I'm still offering energy healing and that too, but I don't really advertise Reiki so much. But yeah, if anyone out there who's a practitioner who wants some tutoring or some mentoring or instruction from my years of experience and studying, perfect, hit me up. And also, yeah, and now I'm on a bit of a new journey with Hermetics, the Franz Barden lineage stuff, which I've found to be some of just the best material that cuts straight to it. And yeah, and my new love is his third book, Key to the True Kabbalah, which is, in Hermetics and even in Qigong, you learn about the three basic energies and then the Wuji and the Tao. So you've got, vital, astral, mental, Akasha or ether and light. And then you've got the four elements and the astral body, which are energies you can play with. And then you go to KTQ and then you've got 27 letters of the Kabbalah to play with, and that does 3-point concentration. And oh man, it's a big old candy store out there, everyone, and you can have a lot of fun and you can do a lot of good. And yeah, there are some real challenges when you start stepping up. You get held to a higher, slightly different standard. So just take it easy on yourself. Find the accessible things. This is some unsolicited advice, but yeah, there's ways you can figure out how to sort yourself out. Trust me on this. You can ask for help, and if you're not getting it, keep looking yourself, because you can find that you can reinvigorate interest in living and life in general, and there's so much beauty and joy out there, and it's well worth exploring. And just review your lifestyle. That's always a good thing to do. So thank you so much, brother. I appreciate that you've just let me basically just go blah, blah, blah. And
Well,
so
I'm just going to say to everyone else out there that if you've enjoyed this interview with Phil and you'd like to see Phil come back again and you have any questions, put them in the comments. And because the more that you can tell us what you want to know, the more that we can dig out this information. So I've known Phil for a few years now, and as you guys know, he's a wealth of information, and really appreciate you sharing what you have today, Phil. And definitely love to have you back, man.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. And I know this conversation could have gone a whole bunch of different ways, but I'm glad that we got to focus on some of the energy healing stuff because truthfully, it's really where my heart is, like to be able to have a really fun practice like I do and be able to extend that to others for, real tangible benefit. This has actually been really wonderful, bro. I appreciate this so much. Thank you, Aaron. You're a real top man. And I'm so blessed to have you in my life. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. We will catch up again soon, my brother. Have a fantastic day. And everybody out there, I hope you really enjoyed this interview today. And thank you, Phil.
Thank you.